Hello guys, welcome back to a brand new video, and here we are. The moment that we have all been waiting for. We are officially 2 days out from election night. And wow, I'm excited because I have been studying this for literally since 2021, and it's all coming to a head. I'm so happy. I don't even at this point, I kind of just want it to be over because it's just been ever since that debate in on June 27th. It feels like there's been a constant barrage of stuff, and it's hard to keep track of and like just absorb at this point. So it's just going to be nice to have it be done. And I have gone through my governor prediction, my Senate prediction, my House prediction, and then here we are. The big one left. My presidential election prediction. This is going to be huge because this is everything. This is everything that this has been leading up to. That the last 4 years have been leading up to. And here we are. I'm just gonna fill out the map. So I'm just gonna go state by state, because I'm not just filling in the states. This is the end, so I want to go through as much detail as possible. This is gonna be probably a pretty long video unless I get tired. But let's get started. So I'm gonna start off with the safe states for Kamala Harris, the states that I think will go to her by more than 15 points. Starting off with Washington, D.C. It is the most liberal place in the entire nation. I think it'll go to her by like 80 points. Then I've got Hawaii. It's a extremely liberal state. Barack Obama won it by like 50 points. He won it by 50 points, which is insane. And it has trended to the right a little bit. There were like those Maui fires, I think they were in Maui. And there's just been talk of it trending right, but it's not even going to be close to enough. I think Harris wins it by like 20, 25, maybe 26 points. Next, there's the state of California. This is the biggest one in the entire nation, and I have it going to Harris. There's been talk of it shifting to the left, or there's been talk of it shifting to the right. And I believe that it will eventually be shifting to the right. But as of now, I do think it will slightly trend Republican, but not by very much. I think it'll be like D plus 26. And then I've got the state of Oregon. This one is a state that used to be extremely competitive, even like 20 years ago, but it has been shifting to the left considerably. And at this point, it's going to be like D plus 16. And then I have the state of Washington, a like D plus 19, D plus 20 state. I think Harris is going to win it by around 18 points. It's like Oregon, but slightly more to the left. Next, I'm going to go all the way to the other end of the map and go with Maine's first. It's like the most blue part of Maine. Then I have Vermont. It's extremely blue, home state of Bernie Sanders, Massachusetts, like historically one of the most liberal places in the entire nation. Rhode Island, there's been talk of it shifting to the right, and it is probably shifting to the right, but it will not be by very much. Kamala Harris is going to win it by a decent margin, by like 17 points, 16 points. Connecticut is also going to be safe. Harris is going to do good here. She's going to win it by like 18. And then there's another big one, New York. I know a lot of people are saying maybe it's going to be down to 10, maybe it's going to be down to 7 or anything. I'm sorry, you're wish casting. New York, while it is shifting to the right, largely because of Long Island, it's not going to be all of a sudden this like barely like left-leaning state now. No, Harris is going to win it, and she's going to win it by a little less than 20 points. I think 19, maybe 18 points. Is most likely here. It is shifting to the right, but it's not enough to get it out of safe just yet. Next, the state of New Jersey. Kind of similar discussions here about it shifting to the right. It is going to be a lot closer than New York. It is basically borderline safe, but I believe it will be safe. Next, there's the state of Delaware. Joe Biden's home state. I believe Harris will win it by around 18 points. And then the state of Maryland, one of the most blue states in the entire nation. I think Harris is going to win it by around 30 points. It is shifting to the left extremely fast. Yeah, I think she wins it by 33. There is a somewhat competitive Senate race there, but it's not really going to affect the up ballot. And yeah, I believe Harris will win it by around 33 points. Moving inward, we have two more safe states. First of all, the state of Illinois, the home state of Barack Obama. Biden won it by 17. Clinton won it by 17. Obama won it by 17 in 2012. It's not really going to be, I don't think it's going to deviate from the norm very much. I think Harris is going to win it by 16-ish, 16 to 17, probably 16. And then we have a new addition to the safe Democratic states, a state that wasn't there in 2020, and that is the state of Colorado. It used to be extremely competitive. It was a swing state up until around 2016 when it started swinging hard to the left. And at this point, it is a safe Democratic state. You've had good performances from Democrats over 2022, which is what mainly confirmed to me that it is a safe Democratic state. Michael Bennet, the Senate candidate, won re-election by a bit less than 15, while Jared Polis, the governor candidate, won re-election by almost 20. So yeah, I think it is going to be safe Democratic around D plus 15, D plus 16. And that is it for the safe Democratic states, putting them at 191 electoral votes. Now for the safe Republican states. First of all, you know what's coming, the state of Wyoming. It is a classic in the state of nothing. There's just nothing there. It is the home state of Liz Cheney. Not gonna make much of an effect. Trump's gonna win it by like 40 points. Next, right next to it, there's the state of Idaho. Not as right-leaning, but it's gonna be safe. Right below it, I like Trump plus 30. Right below it, you've got the state of Utah. It's a state that is shifting to the left incredibly fast. They do not like Donald Trump, and I believe it will be under 20 points, which is an improvement from 2020. I think it'll be around R plus 19, R plus 18. But it will just not be enough to get to likely. Maybe by 2028, it will be. Then there's the state of Montana. This one's an odd one because there is an extremely competitive Senate race there. However, I just do not think that it is enough to bring the presidential margin down to below 15. Although that could certainly happen. When there's a competitive Senate race in a state, that brings more turnout operations from a certain party. A lot of the time, Democrats just don't really bother to turn out people in Montana just because there's no real competitive races there, except for maybe their first congressional district. But now that there's a competitive Senate race, I think they're going to be able to turn people out. And it could get to below 15. But as of right now, I think it's just above, maybe R plus 15 and a half. Then I've got North and South Dakota. South Dakota is to the left of North Dakota by around 6 to 7 points. But they're both going to be safe R, so it doesn't really matter. North Dakota is going to be like R plus 33, while South Dakota is going to be like R plus 26. Basically repeats of what we saw in 2020. Next to the most conservative district in the entire nation, the most conservative part of the entire nation, it is Nebraska's 3rd congressional district. It is going to go to Donald Trump by like 50 to 55%. It'll really test his rural ability because that's what it is. It is just rural. It's just flatlands, nothing. And then you got Nebraska at large. This is an area that is, this is a state that is just shifting to the left. You've got growth in Omaha. You've got Omaha's suburbs starting to distance themselves from Trump, basically doing a repeat of what Kansas is currently doing. And although it is starting off to the right of Kansas, I believe it will get eventually to where Kansas is. But as of right now, I believe Donald Trump will win the state by around 18. Next, there's the state of Missouri. This state could seriously be under 15. It always hovers at around R plus 15. Trump won it by 15.4 in 2020. However, here, I just think Harris will go barely above it. However, if that Seltzer Iowa poll stands, then yes, Missouri will be likely. But as of now, I think it is barely above 15. Next, the state of Oklahoma. I do expect there is to be a flip in Oklahoma County in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma is one of two states with West Virginia that every single county went to Donald Trump. I think it's only Oklahoma and West Virginia. I might be wrong. But I believe Oklahoma County is going to flip blue this time, as it is shifting to the left considerably. Maybe that could signify that eventually Oklahoma is shifting to the left, but not enough. Not now. Next is the state of Arkansas. It is a state that has consistently shifted to the right in every election since, I believe, 1996, since the end of Bill Clinton. And I do not think it'll continue that trend, actually. I believe it is just kind of maxed out for Donald Trump, and it will stay pretty static at R+27. Next, the state of Louisiana. With New Orleans, it is actually kind of more liberal because of New Orleans. Without New Orleans, it would be like Arkansas. So it's going to be like R+18, kind of similar to how it was in 2020. However, maybe Harris can bring out some black turnout there, which wasn't there previously, and maybe she can get it to 17 or 16, but that's the extent of the state. Kind of similar to Mississippi, a state with extremely high black population. I believe the highest in the entire nation if you exclude Washington, D.C. And if she can pull out a black turnout, yes, it can go under 15. It was only R+16 and a half in 2020. However, as of now, I believe that it is just over 15. Next, there's the state of Alabama. The black belt does run through it. However, I just do not think it is enough to... the state is not remotely competitive. It's Alabama. It's going to be like R+25. Then there's the state of Tennessee, which as of now is pretty politically similar to Alabama. However, it is slowly moving to the left. You've got some growth in Nashville, and I think it could be somewhat competitive in the future, in like future years. But as of now, I believe it's going to be around R+22. Next is the state of Kentucky. Don't be fooled. They reelected their Democratic governor last year. Yeah, it's not a blue state. It's going to be like R+26. Then the state of West Virginia. It could seriously be the most conservative state in the country this time around. It could beat Wyoming. Trump has a certain appeal with these blue-collar, Rust Belt coal workers, and I think he's going to win it by around 40 points. And then the state of Indiana. This one is also, much like Montana and Missouri and Mississippi, a top contender for being barely below 15. However, just as of now, I believe it will be above 15, barely, like R+16. But I could see it going below it. And here we are, with every single safe state filled out. Kamala Harris at 191 electoral votes, Donald Trump at 106. Now, let's get to the likely states. First, for Kamala Harris, or the states between 15 and 5%. First, the state of New Mexico, a state that was originally extremely competitive, a state won by George Bush in 2004, and it has been shifting to the left considerably fast. You kind of hear me say that a lot in this video. I'm going to start sounding like a broken record if I haven't already. And yeah, Biden won it by double digits in 2020. And I think Kamala Harris is going to do slightly worse there just because Trump is gaining with Latinos, but it is not enough to make the state remotely competitive. I believe Kamala Harris will win the state by around 9 points. The next likely state is a state pretty similar to New Mexico in that comparison, which is the state of Virginia. Much like New Mexico, it was extremely competitive. Much like New Mexico, George Bush won it in 2004. But much like New Mexico, it took a hard left after 2008 and was won by Joe Biden by double digits. And I believe, much like New Mexico, it will be slightly narrower, but still will not be competitive this time around. Republicans would like to point at the early day voting in Virginia to say that, like, it's going to be extremely competitive, guys, or Trump's going to flip it. No, he's not going to. It's going to be called like 2 hours after polls close, maximum, just because it's Virginia, and the Northern Virginia suburbs just do not like Donald Trump. He is poison to the suburbs. Virginia is largely white, especially in the Nova suburbs, and white college-educated voters. It's Donald Trump's worst strong suit. It is the demographic that he is doing the worst in. And yeah, or it is the demographic that is moving the most away from him from 2020. And I believe we are seeing that in Virginia. I think Kamala Harris is going to win it by around 8 points, maybe 8.5. So it is a slight improvement for Donald Trump from 2020, but just not enough. Next, the state of Maine. This one is a state that got somewhat close in 2016. Clinton only won it by 3 points. However, come 2020, Joe Biden won it by 9, and I believe Kamala Harris will win it by a similar decisive margin. Maybe she'll win it by around 8.5 this time. But she is doing a lot better with whites this time around compared to 2020. And yeah, I believe it'll be like D plus 8.5. Next, the state right next to it, the state of New Hampshire. Much like Maine, it was extremely close in 2016. Hillary Clinton only won it by around 2,000 votes. It was the second closest state in the entire election. So it might make you think that it's going to be close in 2020, right? No, it took a hard shift to the left, and it voted for Joe Biden by 7.5 points. And I believe Kamala Harris will replicate that a bit. I think she'll win the state by around 7 points, which is kind of crazy. To people saying that it is going to be under 5, or it is going to be competitive, or Trump will win it? No, he is not doing that good with whites for that to happen. And the next likely state that I have for Kamala Harris is the state of Minnesota, the home state of her vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz. She is doing, like, Joe Biden won it by 7 points in 2020. And with Tim Walz as her vice president, someone who is well approved of by the state of Minnesota, I believe she's going to do just as good, winning it by around 7 points, maybe even 7.5. Which could bode well for her in states like Wisconsin, which have a very similar political climate to Minnesota and very similar demographics. And the final likely state that I have for Kamala Harris is not a state, it is Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District. It is remarkable how fast this has shifted to the left. In 2012, it voted for Mitt Romney by 7 points. In 2016, it voted for Donald Trump by 2 points. So that is in a much more red national environment, that is a 5-point shift to the left. And then in 2020, it voted for Joe Biden by 6.5 points. It is insane how fast this district has shifted to the left, and therefore how fast it has made Nebraska shift to the left. It is largely comprised of Omaha and Omaha's surrounding suburbs, and they just do not like Donald Trump. Like I said, Donald Trump is poison to the suburbs, and I think he will lose this district by around 9 points. In fact, I could see it going above 10 points. However, I'm just going to leave it at 9. And now for Donald Trump's likely states. First, Nebraska's 1st congressional district. It has a lot of the surrounding suburbs of Omaha, so it kind of carries a little bit of what Nebraska's 2nd is going through. Also, it got redrawn after 2020, so it would have been like R plus 11 instead of how it actually was in 2020, where it was R plus 14.9. So I believe it will shift to the left compared to 2020, and it will only be around R plus 12. And the next state that I have for Donald Trump is the state of Kansas. This is an interesting one. It is the only state that was expected, that normally hovers around 15, that actually went to under 15 in 2020. And that's largely because it is shifting to the left considerably. They just re-elected their Democratic governor 2 years ago. And that's because Topeka and its surrounding suburbs are growing rapidly, and they're shifting to the left because they are suburban. And like I said, Trump does not do well in the suburbs. So I believe it will be a shift to the left from 2020. And I believe Donald Trump will only win it by around 13 points. This will be a competitive state in the future. And the next likely state that I have for Donald Trump is the state of South Carolina. It was a state that he won by 14.3 in 2016. But in 2020, he won it by only 11.7. So it is shifting to the left just a little bit. And Kamala Harris could make it a little bit closer if she does spike black turnout, because it is a state with an extremely high black population. So, but I just do not think she will be able to do that. And I have the state at around R plus 12 to R plus 13. I'd probably say R plus 12.5. And the next likely state that I have for Donald Trump is a extremely interesting state, the state of Alaska. It is going to re-elect, I'm predicting, its Democratic representative, who they elected 2 years ago, Mary Peltola. And years ago, they just reelected their more independent, but still Republican, Senator Lisa Murkowski. It is a very bipartisan state, and it is shifting to the left incredibly fast. In 2020, Joe Biden flipped the county of Anchorage, and I believe that growth will continue, that separation from Donald Trump will continue, and eventually it will be a swing state. However, as of now, I do believe that it is still squarely in Donald Trump's column, but it will be closer than 2020. In fact, it'll be a lot closer. I have it as only R+8, which is a significant shift. And it means that come 2028, it may even be a lean Republican state. And the next likely state that I have for Republicans is not a state, it's a district, Maine second. This is kind of a weird one. It was a district that Barack Obama won by likely Democratic margins both times. And yet, Donald Trump won it by 10 points in 2016. And then come 2020, he still won it by 7.5. It's clear that this, much like places like Iowa and Ohio, have a special appeal to Donald Trump. And he can seriously take advantage of that. And I believe he will win the district by around 8 points. There are maybe even 9. There has been some talk. There have been like some polls showing that Democrats are maybe above, are maybe ahead in Maine second. That's not going to happen. I'm sorry. It's still pretty safely Republican. And the next likely state that I have for Republicans is the state of Florida. A state that was once extremely competitive is now falling into Republican hands. No matter how much money the Democrats try and pour into the state, it is simply not enough. I believe Donald Trump will win the state by around 8 points. Miami-Dade is shifting even more Republican. While there is some shifting leftward in the north of Florida, it is not even close to enough. Early voting and mail-in voting have been looking literally atrocious for Democrats in Florida. They're getting clobbered, and it will not be, there's basically no chance of Florida going blue this time. No matter how much people like to say that it might be going blue, it's not. And the next likely state that I have for Donald Trump is the home state of his vice president, Ohio. It is a state that was extremely competitive and shifted to the right considerably once Donald Trump became the presidential nominee. In states like Ohio and Iowa, he just kind of has a special appeal to the white working class, blue-collar workers. And that has seriously made the state shift to the right. It is a state, no Republican has ever won the White House for that Ohio. And that trend will continue because it is pretty squarely into Donald Trump's column. I believe he will win it by around 9 to 10. Well, I believe he will win it by around 8 to 9 points. If I had to guess, I'd probably say he wins it by 8%, which bodes well for the Democratic Senate candidate there, Sherrod Brown, who is fighting for his life for re-election. And the next and final likely state that I have for Republicans, it's the talk of the town, folks. It is the state that everyone has been talking about for the last 24 hours, the state of Iowa. Now, some of you are probably shocked. So basically, what came out yesterday was a Seltzer poll. They are the most accurate pollster in the entire nation. And people were saying that, if it's below, R+7, it's bad for Trump. If it's below R+5, it's a catastrophe. If it's below R+3, we're in for a blue wave. None of them. Well, actually, maybe some. But most people did not even remotely think that instead of it being R+3, it could be D+3. It's insane. I know. I don't know what sauce they're cooking up in Seltzer, but I do not think it will be that accurate. I'm sorry. I know you shouldn't normally bet against Seltzer, and I could be proven wrong, but I just do not think the state is going blue. Especially by a lean blue margin. I think this has shifted my predictions a bit. It made me flip 2 House districts in the state of Iowa to Democrats, one of which I've since retracted, but I will show that at the end. So yeah, but it has also, and it has made me move my Iowa prediction from around R+10 to R+7 to 8. Right now, if I had to guess, I'd say Iowa is R+8. Just because that poll is insane. It is Seltzer we're talking about, the most accurate pollster in the entire nation. So to have Iowa go to Donald Trump to have Iowa go to Kamala Harris by 3 points is insane. And only time will tell if they're accurate. But if they are even within like 7 points, that is still horrible for Donald Trump. And then you see his defenders try and come and say that, oh, they had a Biden +5 recall vote. Yeah, recall votes are always bad. They're always inaccurate. And people always side with who ended up winning the presidential election. So I'm not surprised why it's like that. And even if they are only off by around 7 points, which is a big margin of error, something that they have never had, even then, that is still a catastrophe for Donald Trump. His campaign should be ringing every red light. All of the alarms should be ringing for them. It is DEFCON 1. Because let me say, if Iowa actually goes blue, if it actually goes to Harris, it is over. It is over for Donald Trump. But as of now, I've got it as R+8. I know some of my peers are going to be saying, no, maybe it's lean. I'm sorry. I think while Seltzer is very good as a pollster, I think this is the year where they're off. But it has made me shift Iowa to the left considerably, just not enough to even make it lean. And here we are. All of these safe and likely states filled in. Kamala Harris at 226 electoral votes. Donald Trump at 179. The remaining states are all states that I think will be under 5 points. However, I feel like one is kind of sticking out here. One that isn't normally in your list of swing states. It's the state of Texas, and I'm going to cover it now. Yes, I do think it will go to Donald Trump. I think it will be barely below 4 points, but yes, I think it will go to him. It is a state that has been shifting to the left incredibly fast. I've been saying that so many times, but if there's one state where it actually matters, it's Texas. It was R+16 in 2012, R+9 in 2016, and then only R+5 in 2020. That shift to the left is remarkable. Don't let anyone try to tell you otherwise, that Texas is not shifting to the left. That is not true. You had Texas shift to the left in a year when the Rio Grande Valley shifted to the right by 30 to 50 points. At a certain point, Donald Trump's growth in the Rio Grande Valley is going to slow down, if not stop. And because I believe his gains in the Rio Grande Valley this year will be even less than in 2020. And at this point, even a strong shift to Trump in the Rio Grande Valley would not even be close to enough to stop the state's leftward shift. There are just too many factors going against Republicans here. The suburbs of places like Austin and Dallas just are shifting to the left so incredibly fast, and they have so many people that it could completely offset any rightward shift in the Rio Grande Valley. Not to mention the urban growth in these places, in Houston, in Austin, in Dallas, in San Antonio. Places where tons of people from all across the map, from the Rust Belt, from California, are moving to, and therefore shifting the state to the left. So yes, I believe it will be under 5 points, but with the way things are looking, I just do not think it is even close to enough to make it a true battleground state this time. But come 2028, yeah, it could seriously be. So here we are, left with the actual swing states. The actual states that I think could go truly either way. 93 electoral votes will decide this election. Donald Trump is at 219 electoral votes. Kamala Harris, 226. And let's get started. First, the lean states for Kamala Harris. I'm going to get started with the state of Michigan. This state was at once kind of seen as a state that could maybe go Republican. But this whole time, I've stood firm and I've said, it's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening. And, well, it seems that Michigan Democrats have only been shored up. The turnout in Detroit is looking somehow better than 2020, which is ludicrous. the sheer turnout there is only something that bodes well for Democrats. I understand there's a fear from a lot of Democrats that a lot of third-party splitting because the Gaza issue will affect Michigan, but I just don't think it is enough. I do believe Joel Stein will take a couple thousand voters, but I think that the Democratic gains in places like the suburbs and increases of growth in places like Detroit will be enough to offset it. And I think Kamala Harris will win the state by around 2 points, maybe 2.5. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to give my final Texas characterization. I think it's going to be like R plus 4.5. So Texas R plus 4.5, Michigan D plus 2.5. This is the one state of the 7 battleground states where I would probably be shocked if it went to the opposing candidate, just because it has been so assured at this point that it's probably going to go blue, and it's probably going to be by a decent margin. In fact, there's a chance that it votes to the left of the nation for the first time since, I think, 2012. Yeah, and it's only made worse if that Seltzer poll is correct. But we'll talk about that later when we get to the other Rust Belt states, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. The next lean state that I have for Kamala Harris is the state of Nevada. Now, it has looked bad recently for Democrats. Early voting has looked, frankly, awful. Republicans have had a firewall of around 50,000 votes, which is just not good. But if you look at the data, hear me out. First of all, Harris is gaining a lot in places like Washoe County, where Biden only won it by 4.5. I expect her to win it by over 5. But the real place where Democrats need to turn out is in Clark County, where originally they looked bad. But as time has gone on, Republicans have started to dip below first their 2022 numbers, and now even below Democrats. And I only expect this to grow as Democrats turn out on election day. Now, that is a big gamble with the rest of these 7 states. Aside from Michigan, where Democrats are doing well in early voting, in the other 6, Democrats just aren't doing as good as they should. So, in order for Democrats to truly win them, they would have to outperform on election day. They would have to turn out in ways they haven't before. Because, well, Republican turnout is looking great in early voting. And that can be explained by, before, Trump saying that early voting is rigged. But that doesn't really explain how Democrats aren't turning out. But it can be explained by the fact that the pandemic just isn't happening anymore. And Democrats are changing the way they vote. Both parties are changing the way they vote fundamentally. And that could be the reason why this is happening. And that is certainly possible. That is the real question here as to whether Kamala Harris gets elected president or not. Can Democrats turn out on election day? That is the question. If they do, she wins. If they don't, she doesn't. And that holds extremely true in the state of Nevada. But in the state of Nevada, I say they do. And I think Kamala Harris will win the state by 1.5 points. I know John Ralston is probably going to predict a Trump victory, but this time, I know, just like Adam Seltzer, you probably shouldn't bet against him. But this time, I'm going to have to go against him. And I'm going to say that Kamala Harris wins Nevada by around 1.5 points. And then there were 5. And now I'm going to get started with the lean state for Donald Trump. And it's the state of North Carolina. It is a historically Republican state. A state that I believe for like 30 years, or at least more than that, hasn't voted Republican, or hasn't voted Democratic, except for 2008, which was a blue tsunami. Much like Virginia, it was originally like an R+8 to R+12 state. However, after 2008, it has shifted to the left more and more and more, to the point where now I think it'll only be around 4 to 5 points to the right of the nation. It is a slow shift to the left, but it is a shift nonetheless. More people are just moving to urban places in North Carolina, and most of those people are liberals. They are Democratic voters, and that is causing the state to slowly but surely shift to the left. I could easily see this state being underwon, and hell, I could see it going to Kamala Harris. But as of now, with Republican turnout looking good, and with Trump holding tons of rallies in North Carolina, I think they're starting to regain their ground in North Carolina. When I originally, at one point, right after the debate, had it going to Kamala Harris, they have slowly started to gain more and more ground to the point where now I think it's lean Republican. And I believe Donald Trump will win it by around 1.5 points, maybe a point. And now we are here, left with the 4 states that I think will be under 1%. 56 electoral votes to decide the entire election. Kamala Harris at 247 electoral votes, Donald Trump at 235. So, who's going to win? We'll just have to see. I'm going to get started with the states that I think Kamala Harris will win by less than 1%. These are the tilt states. And the first tilt state that I have for Kamala Harris is the most important swing state on this entire map. It is the state of Pennsylvania. It is Joe Biden's home state. It is the state where there's consistently the most money spent every election. So there are a couple reasons why I believe Pennsylvania will go Democratic. First of all, its suburban population. There are tons of suburbs. There are suburbs of Philly, suburbs of Pittsburgh, suburbs of Scranton, and those are the big places where I believe Kamala Harris will improve. Not to mention Donald Trump's rule appeal. If the Seltzer poll in Iowa is accurate, then that wildly impacts the entire Midwest, the entire Rust Belt, as a lot of those are comprised of standard white working class, blue-collar workers. And if it is to be believed that Kamala Harris is now doing exceedingly well with them, then she is outperforming. And if that poll is correct, then I think she'll win Pennsylvania by a lean margin. But as of now, I just don't really believe that, and I think it will be under 1. Now, I know there is some talk about the firewall, the infamous firewall of early voting. And Democrats have their firewall at 400,000 votes. It may be worrying to Democrats that in 2020, their firewall was 1.1 million votes. And this time, it is only 400,000, when Biden only won the state by 80,000 votes. Well, there's a couple reasons why they are different. And I have explained them previously in Nevada. But to put it shortly, Republicans don't believe mail-in voting is rigged anymore, and Democrats, there's no more pandemic, so Democrats can actually turn out on election day. And I believe that this state can easily go to Donald Trump if Democrats do not properly turn out on election day. As of right now, Democrats are not on pace to win Pennsylvania. Just because if you just look at the early voting, they are underperforming what they had. And in order for them to actually win it, they need to turn out and vote on election day. That is the big marker. And if they do not meet that, Donald Trump will win the state. But as of now, I am somewhat confident that they will, and that Democrats will win the state of Pennsylvania. And here we are, the 3 closest states, Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. 1 state shifting to the right, 2 states shifting to the left. And there is 1 more tilt D state for Democrats. And it's the state of Wisconsin. Meaning that, yes, I believe that as of right now, Kamala Harris will win the 2024 presidential election. I believe she'll be elected the 47th president of the United States. However, it is no guarantee. The states of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are tilt, and I am just barely giving Wisconsin to her. In fact, I had Wisconsin going to Trump for about the last week until that Seltzer poll. This is why I believe it will go to Kamala Harris. First of all, much like Pennsylvania, actually, it's almost identical to Pennsylvania in terms of reasons, except early voting is slightly better in Wisconsin. There is more turnout in places like Milwaukee, which is obviously a good sign for Democrats, especially because, unlike Michigan, there's not many Green Party, third party, pro-Palestine voters there. So I believe that factor is not there in Wisconsin, not to mention the suburbs of places like Milwaukee, which Democrats are improving in, as they are nationwide in the suburbs. And then finally, in the rural areas, where it seems like Republicans are maxed out, if not reverting. especially in the driftless areas like Wisconsin's 3rd Congressional District, as that is extremely similar to Iowa's climate. And if Iowa is staying stagnant or shifting to the left from 2020, that is a bad sign, because Donald Trump, the core strategy of Donald Trump's success is turning out rural voters for Republicans in unheard of numbers. If you look at the county map of Wisconsin or of Iowa in 2012, and then look at one from 2016, you will see the rules completely switch. They go from light blue to deep, deep red, because Donald Trump can properly turn them out, which can, a lot of the time, make up for suburban and urban losses. But I just do not think it will be enough here, much like what the Seltzer poll says. Also, not to mention in places like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, there have been some good polls from like the New York Times and Marist to show that, yeah, Democrats are probably going to win the blue wall, but it's extremely close, and it relies on election day turnout, especially in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And now, for the two tilt states for Donald Trump. I believe that both of these could easily go to Kamala Harris. These are both states where we have seen Democrats get underestimated in the past, much like Nevada polling. Just in general, the entire Sun Belt tends to underestimate Democrats. And I believe we will see that again. Donald Trump is not winning Arizona by 5 points or 4 points. He's not winning Georgia by 4 points. We have had some gold standard polls come out from here, and they do show Donald Trump leading in the state. We had AJC come out with an R+4 poll out of Georgia, and we had something similar come out of Arizona. They're their own gold standard pollsters. But as of now, I think that both of them are going to be tilt Republican. First, I'll get into Georgia. It's a very African-American heavy state where it is shifting to the left incredibly fast. There are tons of people moving to Atlanta from places like the Rust Belt and California. In fact, that is a similar thing in basically every single Sun Belt state. And that is what is driving their leftward shift. And I believe that it is affecting Georgia. It has been historically a Republican state. The last time a Democrat won the state, aside from 2020, was 1992 with Bill Clinton. And then he did it. After the state was shifting left for decades. George Bush won it by 16 in 2004. Mitt Romney won it by 7 in 2012. Donald Trump won it by 5 in 2016. Joe Biden did it. With the help of people like Stacey Abrams, who were getting out the vote, he won in Georgia because he managed to turn out people in Atlanta, and Donald Trump caused these suburbs to shift to the left considerably. White educated voters shifting to the left. And that is going to happen again. These suburbs and white educated voters are shifting to the left. However, in a state like Georgia, that can be overcome by other shifts. The biggest shifts we are seeing in the country are, as previously mentioned, white educated voters shifting to the Democrats, and people of color and minorities shifting to the Republicans. That is something that we have been seeing with Latinos and with African Americans. I believe that Trump is not going to get 30% of the black vote or something like that, something crazy, especially because Kamala Harris is going to do insane numbers with black women. But I do think he's going to gain there by around 1 to 2 points. And that is enough to offset Georgia and their suburban shifts. So I do barely think Trump wins Georgia, but it could easily go the other way, and I could easily see Kamala Harris winning it. And then there's the state of Arizona. I had this state going to Kamala Harris for a little bit. However, the early voting just isn't really good enough for Democrats, much like Georgia. In Georgia, we saw Democrats are hitting their numbers in Atlanta, but they're just not getting there with total black turnout. And in Arizona, Democrats are just not doing enough. The Republicans are on track to get, I think it's called a firewall in Arizona, of 300,000 votes, which is insane. And if that happens, it's somewhat hard for me to see Democrats coming back from it. But it all relies on election day turnout. And at this point, it just completely relies on that. And I can see Democrats overcoming it. But as of now, I believe it barely goes to Donald Trump. Arizona is a very moderate state. It is the state of John McCain. And there are some different shifts there. First, there are the suburbs of Phoenix, which are shifting to the left, like white educated voters, as stated previously. And then there are the heavy Latino voters towards the south of Arizona, which are shifting to the right, as most Latinos are in the country. And they're kind of battling it out to see if Arizona will go blue. And I can easily see it going blue. But as of now, I just think Donald Trump has the absolute slightest of an edge. I think that all four of those states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, could easily go to either party, and it all relies on election day turnout. So get out and vote if you haven't already, no matter which political party you align with. Vote, vote, vote. It is your civic duty. It is the easiest thing you can do to create the most change. Do it. I don't care if you might not necessarily agree with one candidate on everything. It is better than having the other candidate win, right? So make sure you vote. So that is my final map. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz at 276 electoral votes. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance at 262. Things could be completely different on election night. Maybe Ann Seltzer's right. Who knows? Maybe Iowa goes blue, and then so does Georgia, and North Carolina, and Arizona, and Texas, and blah, 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 blah. Or maybe other people are right. Like, I don't know, On Point Politics or Red Eagle, and Nevada goes blue, or Nevada goes red, and Wisconsin goes red, and Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and New Hampshire, and Minnesota, and blah, blah, blah. Really, anything can happen, except the last scenario, and actually the scenario before that. Anything can happen in the 7 swing states. And it all depends on if you vote. If you get out there and express your civic duty, that is what will decide this election. That is what will make things happen. And you should definitely do it. If you haven't registered to vote, it might be too late. There are certain states where you can register on election day, so make sure to check your state. But as of now, I think I'm going to be signing it off here. This is my final election prediction. 2 years in the making, we are here. 276 to 262. So this is my final map, my final prediction, because for the last few days, I've been doing my final maps. This is my presidential map. This is my House map. By the way, I made a change from my last video. I was a little bit too bullish on Iowa, so I actually have Iowa's first, still remaining Republican by a tilt margin, and then I have Iowa's third flipping, but by a smaller margin, only by tilt D. So this is my final House map, this is my final Senate map, and then this is my final governor's map. So in the end, with all my final predictions, the Senate flips for Republicans, the House flips for Democrats, the presidency stays Democratic, but with a new president, and there are 0 flips in the governorships. That is my final prediction. But obviously, things could go completely differently on election night, but that is where I see things as of now. This is not the end of it. I will be compiling all of my predictions for my mega election night, which is coming out tomorrow. Make sure to stick around and tune in for that. And then on election night, I'm going to have my election night mega stream. But I just want to say, before I get to all of that, thank you guys so much for watching over the last few years. We've come very far, and I'm going to talk more about this at the end of my mega election night tomorrow. But we're 2 days out from quite possibly the most consequential election in our lifetimes. I know it's cheesy to say, but here we are. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, also, I think Harrison was the popular vote by 3. Okay, bye.